and welcome to Desi in Design.
Whoa.
If you're new here, I'm your host, Sravya. I'm a creative director and illustrator based in London. And on this podcast, I chat with other South Asian creatives about their career journeys, challenges, and triumphs. Today, I'm excited to welcome Laxmi Hussain, a London-based artist whose work balances the abstract and the realistic, using a unique shade of blue to explore themes of motherhood, identity, and the human body. Her versatile portfolio spans paintings, murals, and functional pieces. She has collaborated with renowned institutions and brands, including the Tate, Monzo, Vans, and H&M Home. In this episode, we dive into her creative journey, discussing her artistic process, the role of emotional expression, and the dynamic balance between creative freedom and commissioned work. Let's get into it. Hi, Laxmi.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us on Desi in Design.
No, thank you for having me.
So I would love to start off with a little introduction about your art and your practice.
Sure. So I am a mother, a Londoner, and my work is all about what I've actually come to realise now is it's all about identity and how I relate to the world around me, my response to grief. But I mostly visually paint the body. I paint a lot of motherhood, and in particular, I am fascinated and obsessed with the colour blue. So most of my work is blue.
So why blue?
So blue is core memories for me. It's my mother. It's as time has gone by and I've uncovered photos, it's my life. It's what I wore for my wedding, what I wore on my first birthday, what my mother wore in one of my very earliest core memories at 5. Lots of things that my mum wore were blue. And she's not around anymore. So it's my way of keeping her with me, and she didn't get to see this part of my journey. So that's how I keep her here.
So it's like the color of your life almost, pretty much.
People ask me now to talk about colour and the importance of colour. And it never really occurred to me until recently that that's what I do. Like, colour is a very important part of who I am, my life. It identifies me, it identifies my work. And in that way, I am completely obsessed with it. It's funny, whenever I open a pot of my particular blue paint, I want to dip my hands in. And I never get bored of it. But it's obviously because in some way, like a friend or a family member or someone you love, it has been with me through so many things.
Mm-hmm. Do you see that it's almost all around you once you start to see it?
It's really funny that we're sitting in a blue room.
Right? Yeah. And it's so funny because when I had guidelines for this, I had please don't wear light blue, but I was like, no, I want you to express yourself. And I would love to kind of hear a little bit about your background before we dive deeper into the blue. You know, a little bit about who you were, who Laxmi was as a kid.
Okay. I grew up in London. I was born here in London. My parents had a corner shop, very kind of stereotypical Indian for my dad. But my dad was so ambitious in ways that I've only been able to see being an adult and looking back in that way, because when you're a kid, you're just like, oh, this is boring. You know, why do we have to come here every day?
Yeah.
But so it wasn't like a traditional corner shop in that my dad tried so many different things. And one of the main things that drove him was food and feeding and melting both of, it was a melting pot for bringing both my dad's and my mum's heritages together. So mum being Filipino and dad being Indian. So he put a kitchen at the back of the corner shop.
Wow.
And my mum and dad made food from both of their cultures. It was predominantly Indian food, like curries and rotis and, you know, filled rotis, like kind of takeaway food but from an Indian perspective, that you could have for lunch, come in and have a cup of tea. And that was life growing up. And then he became more ambitious and he had a cafe. And so it was just making food and selling food and people coming in every day. And we were always in the background. We always went to work with them. We went to school, came back to work with them. Mum would take us home sometimes on the weekends late when they stayed late. And we were also in the background of this, because it's a creative thing, isn't it? It's like, what ambitions can I do to bring this forward? It's very much part of our, well, for my dad, it's very much part of his background. Thinking how you can be unique in that way. And that's very much transpired into the people that me and my siblings are today. We always think from quite a creative background, even if we have professional jobs. That's what it was. And with mum took us home to the Philippines quite often, every couple of years. And so I really grew up with Filipino values about family and culture and food and all those kind of good kind of community things that Filipinos, and it's quite unique to the Philippines that they have, and that Southeast Asian culture as well. That's who I am. There was very little from that perspective from the Indian side, but I always had dad and food and those conversations around who he was.
Yeah. Did you feel like you were growing up questioning one or the other more, like felt like you were missing a part, or was it just I am Filipino and this is the other part?
So when I was younger, actually, I just felt like I was their child. And
that's so beautiful.
Yeah, and I think being in London, it's particularly where I lived and grew up, we were always very fortunate to be accepted. My parents were very friendly people. They made a lot of friends. And we were always in environments where we were always accepted and never felt to question our identity as kids. But as I grew older, I guess people talk to you more frankly. And also, we don't have very big Indian family, but have a huge, huge Filipino family. And so just having two complete opposite sides. Also, mum always wanting to travel to the Philippines, where dad did not want to go to India very often when I was younger, meant that, I still do. I feel more Filipino and identify as Filipino more than I do Indian. But also, I grew up in London. I was born in London.
Yeah.
And I am a Londoner.
Yeah. And how was it to grow up in London? Because I feel that London is so special with so many different communities and so many different influences. And I know you're in Wembley, right? Did you grow up in Wembley?
So I was born in Camden, grew up in St John's Wood, which is where a corner shop was. Right. And we essentially, when I was born, we lived above the corner shop.
Oh, okay.
And then we, shortly after, mum and dad moved to Wembley, and we were commuting on a daily basis. And then when I was starting secondary school, so that would have been 11, we moved to South Kilburn. And it's all like northwest, mostly north, but that's also part, like London has so many different identities, but that is essentially who I am. And I've always stayed in that side of London because of family, friends, whatever. But that feels like home to me.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. Were you supported when you wanted to be creative? Because that is something sometimes in, Asian communities, it's looked down upon.
Absolutely. And I think, so a lot of my childhood, mum enrolled us in dance school, and we did a lot of dance and like odd ones like drama and singing, which I didn't personally enjoy so much, but I loved dancing. And then when I was a bit older, my brother and sister started doing Filipino folk dance for a company that have been around for a while, established by a very good family friend of ours, called Lahing Kayamangi. And that's like now a quite famous, popular dance group in the UK. And we danced with them for years. And that very much, like, you don't think of all these things when you put them together, but you realize that they play a big role in your creativity and who you are as a person. And also because the dances were from all regions of the Philippines and taught you a lot about culture and folklore. And yeah, it's just beautiful. But aside from that, Mum and Dad always nurtured my drawing.
Yeah.
So I was drawing since I was very little, drawing in the shop all the time. And yeah, I mean, when Mum passed away in 2018, we found lots and lots of cards that she had kept when we were kids. And then I saw these photos. I entered a Christmas card competition when I was in primary school, and I'd won second or first runner-up or something like that. And she'd taken me and my classmates, we'd all gone together, and she dressed me up in this little dress, and I'm pointing to my card on the wall in the town hall. Yeah, it's just all of those things. Like, my dad always bought me the materials I needed. And I had, I didn't ever feel like I couldn't be creative, but there was always that element of it's a hobby, not a profession,
Right.
or a career. And I still think that sometimes, like, I wonder, or, when there are dips or difficult moments in being creative, I often wonder, is this meant to be a career?
Right.
Because sometimes it can be so difficult.
Do you feel that that's more internal? Because that's how it was for me. I was the same. I was very much brought up in love and I guess observing my parents have passions as well, creative passions, whether it's cooking or cultural, but then internally.
Absolutely. And I think also because Dad's business was always, hospitality is so difficult. There would be such highs and then there would be real, real lows. And I often felt that worry of there isn't security in that.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that guided a lot of my thoughts about becoming a creative. Why didn't I just do it straight away? It took me quite a while to have the courage to do it. And yeah, I think all of those things have an impact on why I made those decisions and didn't just go for it straight after school.
Yeah. So straight after school, you jumped into architecture first. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I studied architecture for my degree, but quickly realised that wasn't for me.
Got it. Did you make it through or did you
Yes,
switch?
I completed my degree. I did enjoy my degree. My degree had a lot of drawing, and because I'm such a heavy drawer, and that's always the first thing I go to when it's not painting, for example. I love to paint, but instinctively I always go to drawing first. That's what drove me through the course. That's what I love the most. And also I really like making, and there was a heavy element of making in that course. Perhaps because of my age, I feel like it may be much more technology based now, but obviously I'm not there, so I don't know. But yeah, I feel like I was very fortunate to have done the course when I did. We had an incredible studio. It was really sort of like a really beautiful building, and we had a great workshop. And in the workshop, you could also use for personal time, which was really good. I mean, obviously you don't always get the time, but I do remember doing some odd things in there and really enjoying my time on my course.
Was it more of a foundational course or did you have to already pick an emphasis?
No, it was a degree, so just architecture.
Oh, okay. Did you decide to go into architecture because it was a safer option, would you say? Like, did you know that painting as, a degree existed?
So actually, being an artist was never in my career mind. I always thought that would be my hobby. And I was always very good at it. I just didn't ever think that I didn't actually I didn't dream for it. I just thought it would always be part of me, and that's just who I was. So actually, it's really funny because from quite a young age, I always wanted to be a surgeon.
Wow. Okay.
And it's because when we moved out from the flat above my dad's shop, my dad rented the rooms upstairs, and one of the people that he rented one of the rooms to was a student surgeon. Okay. And he had these fascinating books, and I must have been really little, like 5, 6, but he showed me one of his books once, and it relates back to who I am now, but all I remember were how incredible the illustrations were. And so I obviously and he gifted it to me.
Oh.
And I kept that book for years. Like, I remember it as a teenager, like leaving school and whatever, and still having this book. I don't know where it is now, but I did have it for a very long time and would always look at the images. I loved it. And it influenced how I drew. And when we did science, all of these images came back into my science notebooks and stuff like that. And so it played a heavy influence.
Yeah.
So I was obviously like a bit starstruck or like besotted with this young student who'd given me a book that I really loved. Right. And that was it. I was like, I'm going to become a surgeon.
Yeah.
And everyone in my family believed me. I kept up this pretense or this thing for so long. And when I got to A-levels, I'd chosen all the subjects to line up to take a medicine degree.
Right.
But I'd started to lose interest. And I couldn't figure out why, and I couldn't focus on my subjects, and I couldn't get the degree, the grades that I was predicted to get, because for some reason I'd started to lose focus. And I guess I started to realize that I'm more creative than, because what had happened was going from GCSEs, I'd had half creative subjects alongside all of these academic subjects, which I was good at both, because I have that sort of brain where I have a slightly technical brain that complements my creative side. But when they're not together, the academic side disinterests me. Right. But if they are together, I excel at both.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that until I did my A-levels, and I was like, there's no art. What am I going to do? I hate just doing science, maths every single day. And my grades kind of went downhill. And nobody could figure out why. And I was like, I just am not interested anymore.
Yeah.
And architecture seemed like the only way for me to get that back, but still fulfill that I needed a profession and not. And so I guess from the start, my heart wasn't truly in it anyway.
It's quite interesting that you said that you saved illustrations, because I was the same way. My parents really wanted me to read The Economist, because they felt like business and, this is like the serious topic. So my dad would always leave that. And I saved all the illustrations, but never read anything. And I didn't know other people did that. So that's really validating, I absolutely love The Economist for the illustrations, but I never really read any of the articles.
I actually have looked at a couple of covers and they always catch my eye. And I'm the person that walks into a bookstore and it's always governed by what I visually see. And everyone says you should never judge a book by its cover, but that's me, because I only see.
100%. I'm exactly the same. But that's, you can appreciate the creativity, and that's more than enough.
And that's always the first thing for me. It's seeing first and then the content. And usually, sometimes, occasionally it's the other way around, but I'm just governed by what something looks like all the time.
Yeah, and how it makes you feel, I guess.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah. And colour now, like everything blue is constantly, you know.
Yeah. And isn't it great that we're so aware that it brings us so much joy or is able to drive emotion, like
Yes.
visuals? So how did you figure out what that now looks like if you wanted to be an artist or a painter, or even just, you don't have to even put a title on it, right? Like, where do you go from here?
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, I get asked this question quite a lot, but actually, lockdown started so many creative careers that I wonder if my story is even relevant anymore. Because all we needed was a bit of time, a bit of calm, a bit of time to ourselves, and it unleashed so much creativity in so many people
Right.
that have gone from jobs that were much more corporate or, very different, complete opposite of what they are now. And I know so many people that out of lockdown are now full-time artists.
Yeah.
And that is so incredible. But it also says a lot about us as a society.
Yeah.
About what we're lacking and what we actually really crave.
Yeah.
But yeah, I fell into an office job after my degree. I was doing a lot of kind of PA work, managerial work, admin, that kind of stuff. And I worked for a couple of really nice companies who actually, when you do a job that's like that, it doesn't matter because you're amongst good people. And so I didn't really think that I needed anything else. I felt like I was on the train, the corporate train where you go to work and then you clock out, and on the weekend you do whatever you want to do. And that was very much my life for many years. And then I had my children, my first two, and it was kind of in between having those two that I had started drawing again. Especially when my eldest was born, he loved to draw, but I feel like he's definitely got an architect's brain as well. He's very technical. He's got that balance of technical and creative, and I could really relate to that. And so I started drawing with him. And we started drawing together, and he was really little. He was 2, but he loved drawing. And then I was doing this, a colleague of mine in the design department that I was working in also started to reconnect with his drawing.
Okay.
And so we would do drawing lunch dates. We would, rather than have lunch, because also when you're at work, often you can forget to find that time for yourself.
Yeah.
So we'd take an hour once or twice a week. We'd sit in the cafe, we'd get our pens out, and both of us would just work on our own drawing projects. And I was just like, I want to do this every day. I plucked up the courage to show some of my drawings to some of the members in the company. Someone asked me if I'd sell some of my cards like half an hour after work on a Friday or something before Christmas.
Right.
And everyone, I know that there's an element there of there being kind to your kind of workmate.
Right.
But they all bought them.
Yeah, that says a lot.
And that was really sweet. And I felt more than it was also about my talent rather than just being like, oh, you're my office mate, I'll be really kind and,
Yeah.
And so I went home, and I think I'd only made 60 quid, but I was really chuffed by that. And it kind of sparked this thought that what if I could sell cards or illustrations? And for a long time I did illustrate because that seemed like the closest thing to what I was doing when I was studying my degree. And all the time before that, whenever I drew, it was always kind of illustrative. And then it became more than that. And every time it became more than that.
Right.
I didn't realise, but it was setting up the cogs for me becoming who I am today and having the career that I have today.
Were those early drawings also about, the human form and motherhood? And what were they?
They were birds, they were elephants. There was a lot of stuff which was a bit more for children. The elephants were very much like I'd kind of developed my own little elephant character, and they were families of elephants that had Nordic backgrounds, stuff like that. And then there were lots and lots of birds. The birds I really love, and I often go back to them personally. But there were elements of the body coming in, but it was if I went to a museum and drew like a sculpture or something very classical, because I did teach myself to work quite classically before, but also quite illustrative because of my drawing brain. And I then had my daughter, who's my second. I started to develop ideas around how the body changes, what it does, how fascinating it is. And I don't know what sparked me to put it in my work, but it just started to happen.
Right.
And at first it was just documenting the body more, thinking about the ideas of being a woman still, having autonomy over my body, not feeling just like a mother, that my body's purpose was now just a mother, but also the identity through still being attractive, perhaps, being a desirable human, because in many ways when you become a mother, I felt that that identity, that part of my identity had gone. And so there were elements of, I guess, me trying to understand how I am as a sexual being that came out in my work in that way, because some of them were a bit exploring a bit more about sexuality and just more intimate parts of the body. But I didn't put that together at the time because I didn't know what I was drawing this for. And then eventually it came full circle and it became more about connection and understanding my relationship with my body, reconnecting to my body, like all of the things that it's done, how it changes over time. We think that we go through life and there is this one form, and all of our, especially for women, a lot of our time is spent getting back to this form. You know, this desire that we have to be this kind of shape or whatever, just not be imperfect. There's so much pressure, but we do so many things. Like, I didn't understand, for me, why I just was infatuated with attaining this body that perhaps isn't mine because of my cultural background, my heritage, my habits, my, you know, I don't know, all of the things that make me who I am. Perhaps that body that I had in my mind is never going to be attainable anyway. But why spend the rest of my life in this misery trying to attain this when, is that really what I want? And instead I started to draw it. I started to draw what I saw, who I was, the more intimate parts of connection. Like now I feature a lot more hands and feet because for me, having lost my parents, that's my identity through them. And especially through my mom, that's how it's my motherhood reflected through the motherhood she gave to me. And that's more important to me now. I care less about what my body looks like from an attractive perspective, because maybe it's because I'm secure and married, but also because I have so much other stuff to get on with.
Completely fair. But it seems like a process is almost like a diary.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
You know, it's one thing to draw, enjoy that process and share it with someone, especially when it is things like elephants or birds. But one thing to use art for creative expression for yourself and your own diary, but then also share that with the world. That's two different things.
That's really difficult, actually. And now I notice that in the early stages, when it meant less to me personally, it was so easy to share. There were elements of, oh, is it good enough? But it wasn't as difficult. And now sometimes when something is really intimate because it's featuring my children or it's featuring, you know, like I often think about my dad's hands and I painted something with his hands holding one of my children. And I didn't feel like I wanted that to go out into the world because it's so personal and I want to keep that memory of him for me, that I didn't share it. And it's funny because it's not explicit, it's not, but for me, it's so personal.
Yeah.
And I don't have the words to express what this means to me.
Yeah.
That I don't feel it's ready for the rest of the world.
Right. And it is very difficult, right, as a creative, because you have to put on your business hat.
Exactly.
You know, how do you balance the art that you create for collections that have to go out for brands or in collaboration, and then that creative expression? Because sometimes it's like, oh, this is so deep, this is so personal, but I also know this would look great with like a brand. But you have to respect yourself and I guess protect yourself as well.
Absolutely. And I think also the artists that are literally able to just paint what they want because either they are much more financially stable or they are in that element of their career where they don't need to paint or earn a significant amount of money, that is quite a privilege to be able to just paint whatever you want. But there are elements of my career where certain things like brand collaborations, and don't get me wrong, I love that my job is so incredibly varied and has so many facets to it. But sometimes I just want to sit down and explore the things that I have, swirling around in my head and just actually get that out.
Right. Right.
And spend that time thinking, because so much of painting is thinking, where does that go? Does that work? Is that what I'm seeing in my head? Are the colours right? Is the balance right? Is that exactly the detail that I wanted?
Right.
But there can be other things like, to earn money from my studio, perhaps I need to have brand campaigns or, working with those kind of people and bringing in different incomes to support the overall dream.
Yeah.
It is multifaceted and that is quite difficult to juggle. Like any business, it has so many revenue streams. This just happens to sit on one person, doesn't it?
Exactly. I mean, it's a very good point. And, I wanted to get into this really for especially people that might not know the realities of how do you become an artist and how do you sustain yourself, because it's sometimes all smoke and mirrors.
Yes.
And sometimes, very, very glamorous. It's not always a straight line. I think we were speaking about this before as well,
Yes.
that like it's very customizable.
Absolutely.
Right? So how does it look for you?
So there's a lot of things going on actually. There are things that obviously bring you exposure.
Mm-hmm.
So and this might sound wrong, but I often work for, there are things that you do for free.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these things I also really enjoy. So I often work with charities where it's possible. And I really love that. But often you are working for free because your time is considered a donation. But in other ways, that can bring you a lot of exposure and prestige working with incredible charities who do things that are meaningful for you as well personally.
Yeah.
Like I've had the opportunity to work with blood cancer who my mum had leukemia, and that was really meaningful for me. And I was like, of course, I'll give you my time,
Yeah.
and whatever we can do to raise money for this incredible cause that supports more research. And, they have a big platform that also benefits me. So there is that kind of element, like working for someone where it may not work in a monetary way, but someone else might see you and think, I really love your work. I really love your story. There's your story.
Yeah.
Your story is always for free because you are always pouring out your heart saying, why am I doing the things that I do? And even the artists who are humorous artists,
Mm-hmm.
That is personal. Yet their humor is incredibly personal. And that laughter is one of the things that, attracts us the most.
Yeah.
So it might seem like all fun and games, but your story is the thing that you spend so much time over and don't get paid for, but it's what reaps the most rewards eventually. And then there are things like working, like people love to know who you are. And that can lead to things like brand campaigns, clothing, things that you're interested in. Like people want to see that and you either exchange goods, collaboration.
bartering.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that also, again, doesn't necessarily, like a lot of these, I'm not selling this, but then there are the really fun things where people really connect to your story, feel the personal and coming through, and that represents them too. And they feel seen, and then they want to commission you.
Right.
And that's what's really beautiful, actually. That's one of my favorite parts of my job. It's also one of the most difficult because, one, you really want to give them what they see in your work that they have connected to.
Right.
And also you want it to be personal to them. So an element of it may not be your complete creative freedom. But I love commissions a lot in that someone says to me, I'm having a baby, or I am at this crossroads in my life. And a lot of people tell me they're really personal stories and they want to document it.
Yeah.
And that's that's a real big honor for me to be able to say, this is how I interpret this stage of your life.
Yeah.
And now it's essentially immortalized in a canvas, and you'll be able to look at it every day, but you're also looking at me because it's how I have interpreted your moment in life.
Yeah.
And I never forget those because I know the story. I'm personally attached, and when I deliver it, it feels like I've also delivered something that has been a part of me.
Yeah. And it's so personal because they've come to you because they'd like to connect with you, and you're connected with them too.
Yes,
right?
And then I feel like they are connected to me we may never speak again, but I feel like we are tethered.
Yeah.
For life.
That's so beautiful.
Sorry, disclaimer,
No.
they might not actually realize that, but I do think about those, as time goes by, I often think back to those moments and think of those pieces.
Yeah. It's so powerful because, it's so much more than just selling your art. You get to connect with people and be a part of their journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Being an artist, you get to be so much more than just selling a product. Right?
Absolutely. No, we work very hard for our community to bring beauty to this world. And I think it's, or, just something that sparks conversation, change, innovation. We work so hard behind the scenes, and often not many of us get the chance to share all of our work with the world, but behind the scenes we are doing so much.
Yeah. What do you think it means to be an artist, I guess?
I actually, probably a bit controversial, but I believe everyone's an artist.
I agree with that.
In that many people just don't know the value of drawing, of sitting down, being in art. We do it as children so instinctively, and then we lose it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot like how we are now losing our connection to nature.
Yes.
I feel that creativity has come from nature. It's how we tell stories. It's how we visualize things. It's influenced us for years and years and years. And we just lose it for some reason after we grow up. And many people have said to me it's because of education, and that we have this sort of thinking that we need to be quite elite at art, we need to be very talented. It shouldn't be so much about our personal emotions. And that's so heartbreaking for me because there is so much calm that comes from drawing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be for the rest of the world. It can be just for you. Yeah. And that is enough for you to be an artist.
Yeah, I love that. I completely agree with that because sometimes I feel like there are, all these academies and like all these things in place that sometimes are quite elitist and generational where, I don't think I've made it as an artist, or I am an artist until somebody recognizes me. But it is very much within ourselves, right?
Right. And so many people have come to my workshops and just been like, I want to do something different, but I haven't drawn since I left school because I was told I was rubbish. And it's just, I almost am like, often I'm like, because someone told you were rubbish, and you're just repeating what you know they're going to say.
Yeah.
And that means that it's not just, it's happening because we have somehow changed our education of what is important to us to learn and also to actually be human.
Yeah, very much. And it's, I think people think that you're sometimes born with it. But it is very much just a skill, like however you want to express yourself, whether it's dance or you learn a form. And then it's the story, the life.
But in many ways we are born with it, but we're all born with it because we come. So I often think about the creative nature of my heritage in that a lot of things like household items were made from nature. And that is creativity. Dance is creativity. Speech is creativity. Like all of the things that we do and the way that we think of making is being creative. And we obviously, as humans, always have this desire to put everything into categories.
Yes.
And I just think we just need to do away with all of that.
Yeah,
and
how
just
inspiring.
Be.
Yeah, because you don't, when you're just sitting down to draw, that's not the only time you're being creative, right? Your dinner, your morning walk, everything is, you can see creativity everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
So I wanted to do this rapid fire round because I feel like a lot of artists do very serious interviews. And sometimes I just want to know like silly things, So
go for it.
Just real quick, you don't really have to think about it. Would you rather paint with a giant brush or only use fine detail pens for the rest of your life?
Giant brush.
Nice. Okay. If you could host your dream solo exhibition anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Oh, definitely Philippines.
And if you could use one emoji to describe your work?
Blue heart.
Oh, I saw that coming. And would your dream studio be near the beach, mountains, or right in the middle of the city?
Mountains.
Oh, I like that. Very peaceful.
Yes.
Would you hike up there or?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah?
Kid on my back.
Oh, I love that.
I mean, or headphones on and kid moaning down the hill or down the mountain.
And last one, would you rather paint at night or early morning?
Night.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a night owl, but 3/4 of habit have become a day owl or day person just by having kids.
Yeah, the last question I was going to ask actually is how do you manage being an artist, full-time artist with 3 kids? Like
I always get asked this question, and my answer is always different. 1, I am a very terrible sleeper. 2, my mind never stops wearing. And 3, I'd guess it's just ambition, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's just crazy, stupid ambition that can kind of get in the way. But it's just all I know how to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the same for many artists, is that once you actually know that this is the person you are, you don't know how to do anything else.
Yeah. That's just the passion that drives you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you just have to listen to it.
Absolutely. And now my focus is making this the rest of my life. If I retire an artist, I will be completely happy. Even if I don't reach retirement age, but if I die an artist, I'll be happy to die.
Wow.
Put it that way.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to see where you go from here. I wish you all the best.
Thank you. And I'm really excited to hear all the other podcasters.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Be sure to follow Laxmi Hussain on Instagram at thislaxmi to stay up to date with her latest work. If you enjoyed our conversation, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend who would appreciate it. Stay connected for updates on new episodes, behind-the-scenes content, and creative industry insights by following us on social media or joining our newsletter at desiandesign.com. That's all for today. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.